Evening, dear ones. Welcome to our Kirtan. We will begin shortly, just after 7 o'clock in a couple minutes. We'll meditate briefly before then. Let's begin this evening now with a prayer together. Please join me in your heart, and if possible, out loud as we say these words. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, beloved friend God, great masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, all saints and sages of all religions and all traditions, we bow at thy feet and invoke your presence. Thank you for living in our hearts. May we come to know you ever more completely until we become one with thee. We are thine. Be thou ours. Om. Peace. Amen. This evening we will have a kirtan and share some stories. And this is a little different, I think, than anything we've ever done before. Similar, but a little different. We've had Christmas kirtans before for the last several years in Ananda, Sacramento, celebrating the Advent season, the entry into the Advent season. And we'll do that again in a couple of weeks. But today we wanted to honor the tradition that began in America some few hundred years ago of celebrating Thanksgiving, of offering thanks, and just of tuning into gratitude in our hearts in a general way. It's easy to think of the blessings in our lives, the people, the family and friends, the dear ones, the spiritual family that we have, spiritual community that we share, those of us who have that in a very dynamic way. All of these are great blessings in our lives. And so it's sort of natural to focus on those things or those people. But it's also quite valuable and relevant to the times, to the season, to our lives, to simply focus on gratitude itself. This particular Sunday in the cycle of readings that we do in connected with Sunday service is the affirmation for this weekend is gratitude, and it always falls on the Sunday right after Thanksgiving. And so of course it's beautifully timed for us as we celebrate Thanksgiving. But it's a good thing to just offer this in a really conscious way. You know, the affirmation goes by quickly at Sunday service, and the minister may or may not tie that into the main body of the talk, which is generally related to connecting a passage of the Bible and a passage of the Bhagavad Gita and the related themes that that brings up in our lives. Connecting the affirmation to that can, sometimes it's a natural segue, sometimes it takes a little bit of a reach to bring that in. But this evening, as we chant, and I will share a number of stories related to Thanksgiving specifically. But as we chant, let's chant with gratitude. I've repeated it numerous times in these kirtans, Yogananda's words, chanting is half the battle. And that, again, this is one of those little aphorisms that can kind of sail by. And yeah, it is half the battle. Yeah, okay. But you think about that. I mean, we're engaged in a battle with lower self and higher self. We may, Thanksgiving Day may in some ways have represented victory for the lower self if King Food Greed got the best of us at the Thanksgiving dinner table. But in whatever case, think of the blessing of this time, of this day, of the opportunity to chant, the opportunity to sing, the opportunity to be halfway into that battle, to find God and to overcome the ego and to overcome our sense of separateness, which has been, let's be frank, rather emphasized in this year, the separateness, because we've sort of had to be a little more apart from each other with this virus going around the planet. It's like the whole planet has a virus. But these things come with a message. They come with a directive. They come with an opportunity to learn something. And so this evening, as we chant, let's chant with gratitude and let's offer our heart's devotion into every part of it. The more vigorous outward parts of the chant, the more inward parts of the chant, the silence that comes between the chants. Offer gratitude and love into all parts of that. We'll also have a short meditation after several chants, and then I'll share some stories and we'll chant some more after that. So this first chant is dedicated to Yogananda, and the words are very simple. Sri
Guru Deva.
Sri Guru Deva Om. Okay, yes, I was trying to remember if that was a different chant, but yes, Sri Guru Deva Om. Actually, you can think of this as dedicated to the guru in general. So even if Yogananda is not your guru, this would apply to your manifestation of God. So I will change the volume here a little bit so that we don't overwhelm the software. God forbid. We'll sing. Door of my heart open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Which, by the way, is a question, not a statement. Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee, night and day.
Just for once, wilt thou come, just for once, will my days fly away without seeing my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Night and day, I look for thee, night and just for once, wilt thou come, just for once, will my days without seeing my Lord? My days far away without seeing my Lord. Night and day, I look for thee, night and day, night and day, night and day. So my heart open wide, I keep for thee. Your heart open wide, I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once? Wilt thou come, just for once? My days are without seeing
a short meditation after this next chant. This is, who is in my temple? All the doors do open themselves, all the lights do light themselves. Darkness like a dark bird flies away, oh, flies away. This is in reference to the inner world, the inner lights of the chakras and the doorways of the chakras being lit up and opened up.
All the doors do open themselves, all the lights do light themselves. All the doors do open themselves, all the lights do light themselves. Darkness like a carpet flies away, oh, flies away. Darkness like a carpet flies away, oh, flies away. All the lights light themselves, all the doors themselves, all the lights light themselves. Darkness like a carpet flies away, flies away. Darkness like a carpet flies away, flies away. Like a dark flies away, oh, flies away. All the doors open themselves, all the lights light themselves. All the doors open themselves, all the lights light themselves. Darkness like a cloud flies away, flies away. Darkness like a cloud flies away, flies away. Flies away.
a few minutes. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I will share a few stories of Thanksgiving now, and Nirmala will move the camera a little and zoom in, I think. So this first story takes place a long time ago now. This was 1979. It was my first Thanksgiving at, since I came to Ananda, which was um, in September, late August, early September of 1979. So I had spent basically my first 2 months at Ananda and was had hardly left the property. In fact, for the first month, the only place off the property that I went at all was to the meditation retreat, which was part of Ananda. I mean, technically, I was off the property getting up to the meditation retreat, but for Sunday services and maybe a few classes, I went up there. But otherwise, I was literally just on Ananda property. I just felt like I needed to ground myself in the life at Ananda. So, but I was an adventurous sort, and so after that month, I began venturing out a little bit beyond the boundaries of Ananda property, and I rode my bicycle into Nevada City once, which turned out to be a long way. I was in pretty good shape, and I was, had a fairly nice bike. I mean, it wasn't one of these mega thousands and thousands of dollars bicycles, but it was, adequate for my needs. But wow, it was great going down the hills toward Nevada City, but wow, it's tough coming back up them. And so anyway, by the end of that, I decided, I don't know if I'm going to be doing that again because it's, you're on this winding road and um, cars are very close by. Yeah, no cars passed me on the way down the hill. In fact, I might have even passed one or two myself, but coming up, wow, they go zooming right by your left ear. Anyway, so coming to November, my program had finished. I was in what was called the apprentice program for those first 2 months, which were the months of September and October. Come November, I was more out on my own and I was arranging housing, organizing, getting a teepee ready to spend the winter in with another guy who later sold me the teepee and headed back to Alaska where he came from. And so the teepee ended up being mine. It was a brand new teepee, but since I had put the energy into it and bought it from him, it just became mine. And anyway, that's how that went. But um, there was a single mom in the community who had also, I believe, arrived fairly recently. She was living in a trailer nearby, not at Ananda, but kind of adjacent, sort of almost walking distance. And telephones were few and far between in those days, but we ran into people ran into each other at the market or at the mailroom or, sort of walking hither and thither. But anyway, I think I knew her from classes or whatever, and I didn't know her well, but anyway, um, we sort of moved in the same circles, so to speak, a little bit. But anyway, she was looking for someone to go and pick up her car. She had separated from her husband in Southern California. Well, I don't know whether they were divorced or what. I don't, certainly they weren't together after that. So I think they got divorced, whether they were or they weren't at the time. I don't know. But anyway, she asked if I would go to Southern California. She would pay the train ticket to get me down there, which was not terribly expensive, but for her it was a big deal. And um, her ex would pick me up, provide the car and a little gas money, And so I thought, well, gosh, I'm new to California. This is a big adventure. So this was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. It was the day I was going to catch the train. And I came bombing down to Davis, which was where the train station was and still is, by the way. And there's a train that goes right down the coast of California, right along the ocean for a lot of the way. And it's a beautiful, beautiful ride. It's a long ride. It's I want to say about a 15 or 16-hour trip to get all the way down. It goes all the way to San Diego, might even go beyond San Diego, although there's not much left of America at that point. But anyway, I caught that train at, 5 something or 6 in the morning early, and loved the ride all the way down there. And when I got to San Diego, there was nobody to pick me up. And so, this was an era when obviously there were no cell phones, and I couldn't reach her to try to get her to reach the ex to figure out what was going on. Um, I think I had a number for the ex husband, but I think I had memorized it from her. I don't even think I had written it down. So, it was one of these. It sounds to me like, and I've never looked this up. It just occurred to me recently. I wonder if Mercury was retrograde at this point. It's a classic Mercury retrograde kind of story, which means that communications get, missed or delayed or, obfuscated in some kind of way. And wow, some strange stuff happened on this trip. But anyway, he was nowhere to be found. And, I was at loose ends at the train station in San Diego where I knew nothing. I had no map. I had just no sense of anything at that point. I had $40 in my pocket, no credit card, and uh, a lot of uncertainty, let's just say. And I was doing a lot of praying at that point because it was like, I was 19. So, I mean, getting started and, but a lot more. My eyes were bigger than my experience, let's just say. So it's 10 o'clock in the night of a Tuesday, and no place to go particularly, and no, not connecting with him. I mean, I tried calling, didn't get through. Maybe I left a message. I don't even know if I could have. I'm not even sure if answering machines had come in at that point. But anyway, I finally just started walking, and I just had a backpack, a little, something. I didn't have much that I was carrying. Um, so I walked around in downtown San Diego till I found a hotel that looked reasonable. It looked clean. It had multiple stories, and I took a room for $20, and which was half of my $40. And I figured, let's at least just get a decent night's sleep. And so I just crashed out, and I started praying and meditating the following morning like my life depended on it, because, and making phone calls. And I tried calling Ananda Village. I tried, which there were two phones at Ananda Village, one in the village office, one at publications. Well, and then there was a payphone in the barn, but um, if you actually wanted to reach somebody, you had to call one of those other two phones and try to get connected that way. And you know, one of the people answering the phone at publications was not the kind of slippiest, not that kind of take charge kind of person, like, I'm going to sort this out, I'll figure it out for you. Meanwhile, I'm like, I am in trouble down here and I don't have so I finally called my dad, of all people, and got him in Chicago, and he was just, apoplectic with fear and concern, and um, he was very concerned. So it was upsetting to him that I was at loose ends in an unknown city. He was going to try to figure out if he could wire me money, and I just wanted him to see if he could help break the logjam of figuring out connecting with this guy, and which he actually did. He actually ended up being quite instrumental. I was finally able to get a hold of this lady, uh, Adananda, by hook and by crook, by getting messages, to her, and then, but I mean, trying to get her on I think I actually did finally get her on the phone once briefly. And she was like, well, he was supposed to be there. And it was like, well, yeah, he was supposed to be there. Well, where is he? Anyway, so, the entire day was spent in prayer, meditation, phone calling. And come evening, we had still not raised this guy. And I was just, and I had finally, in the afternoon came this uncomfortable decision: is, what am I going to do? Am I going to spend my last $20 on another night in this hotel, or am I going to do something different? So what I opted to do, for better or for worse, is I opted to spend my first and only night in a homeless shelter on Skid Row in San Diego. And I so I went into this place, got fed dinner with the rest of them, had to sort of, work aside the meat, or I don't remember if it was a buffet line or what. I probably was a buffet line, so I could just avoid the stuff I didn't want. But anyway, then you had to take a shower in the group shower, and mamma mia, and then you bunk into bunks with all these guys in a room, and let's just be charitable and say that the level of consciousness was not quite what I wanted to aspire to. That would be maybe a generous way of putting it. I remember the guy in the bunk above or below me. I don't remember which. I suspect it was below me, but because I think I would have climbed up to the top. Um, Called himself, or I should say, was known as, in the circles in which he moved. He was from Chicago, as I was from Chicago, but in the circles that he moved in Chicago, he was known as Gene the Dancing Machine. And this was, who I was communicating with. And Gene the Dancing Machine, you know, regaled me with stories of parties and bars and all the wonderful nightlife that he had experienced in his life, which I thought, wow, that's really awesome. And it really was not at all what I wanted to tune into. But anyway, that's what I got at the Skid Row homeless shelter. Anyway, I spent the night, and I had left my stuff at the hotel. They were generous enough to, kind of keep an eye on my I don't remember if I had a suitcase or a backpack. I think it was a backpack. But anyway, so I went back in the morning. I did the breakfast or whatever. And then I just got out of there. It was like, I want out of this place. And I went back to the hotel and connected with them, and there were messages there waiting for me. I think one from my dad, and a message from this guy. And we worked out that he was going to come and pick me up back at the shelter place at whatever time. And so I made a beeline back to there to get picked up by him. So he arrives in a Porsche 911, Porsche, black. And the guys hanging around this place. Most of them had disappeared, but there were still some hangers on. You had to sort of go do whatever you were going to do in the day. You couldn't spend the whole day there. It was open in the night and in the morning, and then people had to kind of go their way. But a few hangers on. Anyway, so I climb into this Porsche. We go back to the hotel to pick up my stuff at the hotel, and then we go bombing up the freeway at 115 miles an hour. The I don't know if it was the 405 or the 5, whatever, towards Encinitas. And just remember the guys at the homeless place looking at me like, who are you? And what, some guy comes and picks you up in a Porsche. I mean, it was like, what is this? So anyway, we got up to, now, by the way, now it's Thanksgiving, if you did the math right. So I had spent Tuesday night in the hotel. I spent Wednesday night in the homeless shelter. Thursday was Thanksgiving. And you can maybe believe by now that I was thankful to be picked up. This guy, whatever else we may think about him, he at least did pick me up. And when I asked him, it's like, where were you? He was like, well, why didn't you get off in Encinitas? I was like, I didn't know I was supposed to get off in Encinitas. I didn't know where you lived. I mean, this was just one of these, like, he was like, well, I live in Encinitas. Why make me drive an hour and a half to San Diego or whatever it was? I don't even know how far. Anyway, an extra hour. I mean, to him, it was like, well, why just get off in Encinitas? Ay, ay, ay. So anyway, we arrived Thanksgiving afternoon at his place, which was a nice home in Encinitas. It didn't quite match up to the Porsche that he drove, but it was a nice home, and it was near the ocean, which in Encinitas. And he didn't have a kind of a plan for Thanksgiving dinner. And obviously I didn't have any plan. I mean, it's like, geez, I just totally at loose ends here, trying to put my aura back together again. And so he said, all right, well, let's go out to our restaurant. I'll get my girlfriend and we'll just go off to our restaurant. And so, I went off first and only Thanksgiving that I can ever think of that I spent in a Thanksgiving dinner was in a restaurant. And so we got into this conversation. The whole situation was bizarre, as you can kind of gather, but we got into this conversation, and the girlfriend took the lead for some reason in this conversation. And she was determined that through the course of the Bible, God had changed. He went from being a very vengeful and wrathful God in the Old Testament to being a very compassionate and loving God in the New Testament. And I sort of took this all in, and I put up a little bit of a defense for God, like God, I didn't really think that God had changed. I don't know. I just was like, how does this? What do you mean God changed? God is God. What are you talking about? No. She was like, oh no, you read the Old Testament. I mean, like, he was vengeful. He was wrath. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna eat my dinner. And so, dinner finished as bizarrely as it began with this conversation. And I got introduced to the car that I was going to drive back to Northern California, to Ananda Village. And the following morning, I set off. I had to learn I should say I didn't have to learn, because I technically knew how to drive a stick shift. She had a Volkswagen Squareback, which were these cute little Volkswagen, kind of a Volkswagen station wagon, but kind of on the small scale. Some of you will remember what those things look like. Anyway, it had a stick shift, and I was not good, especially not good if I was pointing up a hill and I had to stop, and the car would roll back and the engine would die. So what I did is I would quickly get up to fifth gear on the freeway, and then I would just keep going, and I'd really try not to shift at all. And if I had to, I'd sort of roll to a stop, and then I'd, fight my way through first gear and hope to not kill the engine at the stoplight and have people honking at me or whatever. So I made very few stops on my way all the way up from San Diego back to Ananda Village. So Thanksgiving for me that particular year I tell all this partly because it's such a peculiar story, but the lessons that I take from it, because obviously there were lessons involved. One of them is learn the phone number and figure out the particulars. Sometimes it's in the details and it's like they really do matter. Like where does the guy live? What is his address? What is his actual phone number? What is his name? Blah, blah, blah. Get it all straight. But I mean, that's just the mechanics of it because I was new on the path. And in some ways, the path had been rolled out in front of me. It's like I had enough good karma to just get on it at a relatively young age and launch with a certain degree of family support. I mean, my mom was real supportive. My dad was not supportive in terms of his feeling. He was supportive in terms of his energy because he actually picked me up at the airport he flew to San Francisco the day after I flew and ended up driving me to Ananda Village, which was a great help. I had planned to ride my bicycle, where angels fear to tread. I was going to get from the airport in San Francisco all the way out of the bay and all the way up to Ananda Village. I mean, I was as clueless in certain ways as clueless can be. So, I mean, he was supportive, but I had not really been tested yet in terms of, so what are you going to do when it all goes to smithereens? And, at 10 o'clock in the night in San Diego and the following entire day and 24 more hours of not knowing and trying to figure out and, you know, shaking the heavens with my prayers and not feeling like I was getting a response. And then wham comes, within the space of 45 minutes, it's the Porsche 911 is, the freeway at 115 miles. I mean, it was just like, whoa, okay. This is cool. It was awesome on one level, a little frightening on another, but it was just, in the beginning of the path, one gets tested. It's like Divine Mother wants to see what you're made out of. And for ourselves, we have to know what is inside. And for me to arrive at Ananda Village on that Friday after, Thanksgiving, which is kind of like today, the Friday after Thanksgiving. Oh my God, was I grateful. I was so grateful to be back. I was grateful enough that I didn't even chew out this single mom. I mean, she had enough on her plate anyway, without me razzing her about, could we have gotten the details a little more together? I mean, she was one of these kind of free spirits and, you know, everything was beautiful as far as she was concerned. Somebody brought her car up for her and, God bless her and everything. But just to sort of go through that, it's like you have to find the muscle, find the fiber, find the spine inside. I didn't have Kriya yet at that point, and I was still learning and growing in terms of resolve. So I want to just share one other story. This one's going to have to be sort of brief. I got a little carried away with that one, but I want to just touch on in mid-November of 2003, Nirmala and I moved to India. We were, along with a few others who were we were going there to explore the possibility of starting Ananda in India. And so we arrived, the week of November 15th or 16th. I don't remember exactly which day, around the 16th. Thanksgiving didn't fall for about 10 more days. I believe Thanksgiving that year was also on the 26th. And Swamiji was arriving, I believe, the day before Thanksgiving. So we had about a week or so to kind of land, get situated. Um, we took a guest house and actually we stayed. Yeah, we were at the Centurion Hotel near the airport for a few days, and Swami must have arrived fairly soon, actually, now that I'm really thinking about it, because I remember all of us at the Centurion and looking at the cost of the meals. The Centurion was considered a five-star hotel, and it really, really wasn't. Maybe in its heyday it was, but it had a kind of a funky smell. It was sort of a government five-star hotel, which didn't really add up. But anyway, the bills were fairly high, and I remember we were all kind of doing the math and figuring out that, you know, spending the kind of money we were spending on every meal, and every meal happened with Swami. I mean, there was a breakfast, there was a lunch, there was a dinner, and chances are there was a tea, and there was a something else in there too. So, it was adding up quickly. Anyway, we shifted to a guest house down in phase 2 of Gurgaon, which is about another, I want to say about 10 miles down from the airport, 10, 12 miles from the airport. It's not terribly far, but it's a different in that era it was a suburb of Delhi. Now it's a full-blown city of its own right with enormous skyscrapers, mostly apartment buildings, but huge. Whenever if you call a call center in India, chances are you're either talking to Bangalore or you're talking to Gurgaon, because these places have thousands and thousands of people working in them. So anyway, but in that era a lot of that was just getting started. Anyway, Thanksgiving Day came, and we were all of us situated in the Om Villa in phase 2, which was this cute little guest house. Um, we only stayed there for those days, maybe about 10 days or so. And we had a Thanksgiving meal. We were maybe 10 of us or 12 of us, colony leaders mostly, and we had we were trying to find a place to rent, a large house to rent so that we could get out of the guest house and kind of get more established and just sort of explore, is this trying to happen or not? But I remember the Thanksgiving Day, we had the use of the basement in this little guest house as our temple. So we would meditate together in the morning, as our dining room. So we would take our meals down there in a sort of a different, slightly different part of that basement, but not exactly where we were meditating, but sort of nearby. And then during the rest of the day, it was our office. And we sort of turned it into our publishing house. So we had a printer, we had multiple laptop computers, several of us working on getting Swamiji's books published. But came Thanksgiving Day, and we decided we wanted to have a Thanksgiving sort of banquet or meal. We had invited a few friends, including the daughter of one of our dear friends at Ananda. And she was doing the math. I believe she was about to turn 20. So she was about 19 at the time, who came out from Delhi for this meal because she was doing some student exchange programs for a semester in India. She gave us some pointers on Hindi, which was really sweet. It just was the most amazing little encounter to see her in India. But anyway, the feeling of gratitude to be with Swami in that setting. We had, hoisted up, pretty much boxed up our lives in America, sold a car. The other car ended up getting sold not long thereafter. All our stuff was distributed or sold or given away. Um, and just the sense of we're here, and Divine Mother, whatever you've got in mind is what we've got in mind. And to be with Swami in that setting, he was in his late 70s, and that transition and the travel and all was not easy for him. He fell once at the Om Villa, or maybe several times even. But just the overwhelming gratitude of that feeling, the blessing of sharing that time together, um, it was very, very special. And so those are two little Thanksgiving stories. Um, many, many years apart, but equally valuable in certain ways. And Thanksgiving, as I was mentioning at the very beginning of this satsang, the gratitude that we feel and that we nurture or express or cultivate in this holiday, in Thanksgiving, often we want to sort of apply it to something. Well, I'm grateful to this, or I'm grateful to God for this. Obviously, in the first story, I was grateful to God for rescuing me. Okay, yes, I got rescued. Maybe I was dumb enough to get into that situation in the first place, but I mean, I went there, to explore, to understand, to grow. It was not a bad impulse to make the trip. But so obviously, I was grateful for that. In India, we were grateful for Swamiji's presence in our lives and exploring this incredible adventure of founding Ananda India and just getting our feet on the ground. For us, it was being in India at all. We'd never been to India before, to go there and to go there to live there, not to just go there to visit for 2 weeks or something, but to actually go there and plan to spend the rest of our lives there. I mean, it was pretty amazing. But it's easy to apply gratitude to something, but I'd like to just suggest that we just focus on gratitude to God, period, just as a concept, because it doesn't have to be for something or for someone. It can just be for love, for life, for the joy of being. We walk along the American River Trail almost every day, and today we were seeing lots of kids out there, riding with family, riding with mom or dad, whatever, and or sometimes a whole, string of kids, just kids, like multiple families together or whatever. And just appreciating looking at these little kids and seeing the joy on their faces just to be zooming around on a bicycle with mom, dad, brother, sister, whomever. And it's not, it's not like they're looking at the sky or they're listening to the birds or anything. It's just the joy of being. Let's feel that gratitude and nurture that gratitude. This is a beautiful lead into the Advent season that's coming soon and the coming of Christ into our hearts and into our lives. But let's just enjoy and offer willingly, lovingly, dynamically that gratitude from our hearts. God bless you. We'll chant some more now. So we'll sing Hey Bhagavan, O Lord.
How was your dad instrumental in helping you?
My dad was instrumental in helping because he actually was the one who got in touch with the guy who was supposed to pick me up. And nobody else had been able to reach him. And somehow my dad just kept trying and trying and trying and finally got the guy. And so yeah, he broke the log jam and somehow and probably was able to communicate to him, look, he's down there on Skid Row or, whatever. So, lit a dad, sometimes dads can apply the boot of wisdom to the seat of understanding as energetically enough to get the message through. So it wouldn't at all, and knowing my dad, it wouldn't surprise me if he had done so. Yeah, anyway.
He made it happen.
He made it happen. Yes. Thank you for helping me fill in that detail. I didn't think of going all the way down to that level.
And God did rescue you in a Porsche.
Amazing. Yeah. We'll sing this chant. We'll chant to Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my mind on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Divine Mother, my Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my heart on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my heart on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother, Divine Mother, my Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my heart on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my heart on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Divine Mother, 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 my Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my heart on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my heart on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Divine Mother, 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 my Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my heart on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my heart on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Divine Mother, 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 my Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my heart on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Engrossed is the bee of my heart on the blue lotus feet of my Divine Mother. Divine Mother, 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 my Divine find mother, divine mother, divine mother. We'll close. We'll have one more chant. This is Thou art my life, Thou art my love, Thou art the sweetness which I do seek. In the thought by my love brought, I taste thy name, so sweet, so sweet. Devotee knows how sweet you are, he knows whom you let know. Let me see that thing, honey. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I do seek. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I do seek. In the thought by my love brought, in the thought by my love brought, I taste thy name, so sweet, so sweet. Devotee knows how sweet you are, Devotee knows how sweet you are. He knows me right now, he knows me right now. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I receive. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I receive. In the thought by my love brought, in the thought by my love brought, I taste thy name, so sweet, so sweet. Devotee knows how sweet you are, Devotee knows how sweet you are, Devotee knows how sweet you are, Devotee knows how sweet you are. He knows me right now, he knows me right now. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I receive. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I receive. In the thought by my love brought, in the thought by my love brought, I taste thy name, so sweet, so sweet. Devotee knows how sweet you are, Devotee knows how sweet you are. He knows me right now, he knows me right now. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I receive. Thou art my life, thou art my love, thou art the sweetness which I receive. In the thought by my love brought, in the thought by my love brought, I taste thy name, so sweet. Devotee knows I'm sweet you are. 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 He knows me not me. He knows me not me. Thou art my life, thou art my life. Thou art the sweetness which I receive. Thou art my life, thou art my life. Thou art the sweetness which I receive. Thou art my life, thou art my life. Thou art the sweetness which I receive. Thou art my life, thou art my life. Thou art the sweetness which I receive. Let's close by chanting Om together now, sending out waves of divine light, divine joy, divine peace. Om, peace. Amen. God bless you all. Happy
Live in
Thanksgiving.
gratitude. Happy Thanksgiving.